Welcome to Planetary Gig Talk, Tales of Music and Magic. I'm your host, Jefferson Glassy, Chief Spiritual Dude of the Planetary Gig Society, whose mission is creating unity through music, or as I also like to say, making connections through music with the intention of bringing peace. And here today, we're in suburban Maryland and about to talk with a fabulous, fabulous musician, piano player, guitar player, amazing singer, friend from the heartland, from Kansas. Kelley Hunt, thank you so much for being here today to talk with me.
Thank you for having me. I'm thrilled to be talking to you.
Well, we go back a little bit of a ways. I think the first time I remember meeting you and being involved with music with you was at Blues Week at Davis and Elkins College, Augusta Heritage Center, Elkins, West Virginia. I think it might have been 2003 or 4 or 6 or sometime in there, whatever that was when you know.
Yeah.
And you did a gospel singing class in the chapel there, that round chapel there. Mm-hmm. And one thing I still remember is how you had us start the program off. Everybody was in the chapel, and we came in from outside because you went down into it.
Right.
We came around and started singing and dancing and went down into the chapel and took our places. And it was so rocking. It was fabulous. It was a really great time.
Oh, that was a great time. That is where we met, and I will always remember that first year at Augusta. I think my husband Al and I did that 5 years in a row, but that first year was special for us. And that gospel choir, whoo, y'all were rocking. And I was so thrilled with how that all turned out. And I love the diversity there. And I loved everybody's willingness to just, go with me. I was pushing people pretty hard in a loving way.
Yes.
And you all did it. You all stepped up. It was amazing.
It's something about, singing that kind of music all together in a great environment that just, blows your circuits sort of.
In a good way.
Yeah. And then later, since we started doing house concerts in, I guess, 2004, 5, something like that.
Right.
You've done several concerts at our house, which have been amazing as well. And we've spent time together. So it's just great that we have this opportunity. So thank you again.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
So I know a little bit about music in your life because you have that song Queen of the 88s about your piano teacher.
Right.
But how did that really, what are the first things you remember about music? I mean, did your mom play? Was there music in your family? Did everybody play? Did nobody play? Was piano the very first thing you did? How did music kind of creep into your life?
Well, my first musical memory is of my mother's voice. And my mother was an incredible singer. She just had her 89th birthday yesterday, which is November 2nd. And she still does some singing, but it was her voice that I remember the most. She sang every day in the house. She did some performances. My dad, although this was before I was born, played upright bass in the Navy band. And my parents married in their early 20s in Kansas City, and they always, and to this day, have music going in the house of Kansas City blues, jazz, New Orleans music, a very eclectic bunch of records that involve even like the Weavers and political music. My folks have always been very active politically, as from the time they were, quite young through today. Mm-hmm. So I have an older sister that sings and writes songs, and my brother used to play guitar in a band, and my younger sister sings and plays. So but the thing that really was the big magnet for me was an old upright piano when I was about 3 or 4.
Wow.
One of my dad's college buddies had unfortunately lost his eyesight due to diabetes at the time. And he was refurbishing pianos, player pianos. And there was one piano where the player assembly just simply didn't work. So he refurbished it just to be an upright piano. Very old, pretty beat up. And they rolled it into our garage when we lived in Topeka, Kansas for a couple of years, thinking that my older brother and sister would want to learn how to play. And as it turned out, it was me. And I couldn't keep my hands off of it.
3 or 4 years old.
Yeah. And I would hear my mother sing a song. She always had the radio going of all the popular music of the day. And I would go emulate it on the keys. But the other layer to this, Jeff, is what wasn't discovered, and I certainly didn't know until I was 6 years old, was I couldn't see well myself. I was very nearsighted and didn't know it because I navigated by touch and sound. So that's how I gauged distances. That's how I identified people. That's how I was fearless out in the world because I couldn't see some things that appeared like heights. And
That's amazing.
yeah, so this piano was a big blob of something with these things I could push on it that made sound. And so I learned to play. I was playing for 3 years before I could see it well, which ultimately served me so well because I never looked at my hands when I played.
And you played by what you heard.
Right. I was playing completely by ear. So eventually, my parents got hip to the fact that it was going to be me. They rolled it into the house, and they had to lift me up to set me on the piano bench. But there was no keeping me away from it. And I began to write my own songs when I was in kindergarten.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
I mean,
crazy.
What was that about? I mean, you just, I guess other kids at that age, well, I guess kids do all kinds of things, but
Sure.
want to watch this or do that or run outside and play with snakes or whatever. But this was it just grabbed you.
Yeah, I felt like I was finally being reunited with an old friend as a little kid. I went, okay, here you finally are. And yeah, I love to be outside and run around, and I love every animal under the sun. But every single day, there was time that I knew I could not keep my hands off of it. So that's the magic part of the music.
So were you first playing songs? You said you were emulating your mother's voice. Did you were just playing whatever came out?
Yeah, well, my hands were so small at the time, I could just only do a couple notes at a time. I couldn't do chords yet. But I'd hear my mom sing, like Bye Bye Blackbird or St. Louis Blues or whatever she was singing, and I'd go pick out the melody, and then I wanted to hear other things to go with it, and I started to play with both hands. But I didn't have any reference to what reading music was because I couldn't see it, and I also wasn't old enough that anybody was really paying much attention other than my parents were very encouraging. They're like, great, play as much as you want. Because I wasn't banging away on it.
Yeah.
I was hearing music. And in my mind, this was the best thing I'd ever experienced. And it still is.
Yeah, that's true. So when did you start taking lessons?
Not until I was 10.
10.
Yeah, so I played for 7 years and all by ear. And I wasn't interested in reading music. I was only 10. I didn't have a reference to what doors that would open for me, but I was worried about it because I thought, well, shoot, I can play whatever I want. I can hear it and play my version of whatever that is, really anything that I wanted. So, but, and my mom took me to several different piano teachers, and every piano teacher said, you have to stop playing by ear. And both she and I knew that wasn't right. It was really upsetting for me. Mm-hmm. And so she, to her credit, said, this is part of who she is. We just want to add to her skill set. And one night my parents had over, my dad opened up an international branch of a printing company that he worked for. So every month we had someone from another country to our home for dinner. That's just how it was. And it was wonderful. And we had I believe it was a man from Sweden or Switzerland that sat down and played a classical piece of music. Mom asked me would I play something for him, and I did. And he talked to me and he said, if you learn how to read music, then you don't have to hear it first to be able to play it. And that was my little light bulb went on, and I thought, I can do both. So when my mom, a friend of my mom said, well, there's a teacher named Mary Burke Norton who is also classically trained, but she also loves children, and I think she might be open to helping Kelley develop her ear skills and develop in both ways. And she was right. So when I was 10, I started with Mary Burke, and I took for about 3 years from her. And I learned to read music, and it really did open up a lot for me.
Well, let me ask you one question. It's not quite in the trajectory of your musical life, but I've been reading recently in this book, Nada Brahma, and they make the point that sound and hearing provides really so much more information. It's much more full than seeing.
Yes.
Seeing is kind of objective, there it is, but you get these depths of textures of different sounds and stuff. Would you comment on that? I mean, how did you obviously have a good ear. You started out with a good ear. You've been playing by ear all these. That sound is just enveloping or something.
Well, the first 6 years of my life, that was how I navigated in my world. I never saw my parents' faces clearly, but I knew what they sounded like when they were clear at the other end of the yard. I knew what their footsteps sounded like. I knew what certain birds sounded like. I could anticipate weather before my parents knew it through sound. So for me, having those really important developmental years of relying on touch and sound as my navigators, it not only served me musically, but it served me in a way. There's a different layer of awareness that I still use. And when I really want to hook into something, I close my eyes. So now I have 20/20 vision, but because I had LASIK surgery several years ago. But interestingly enough, though, Jeff, when I got that, the first morning I woke up and was able to see, first thing I did, I jumped up and without my glasses or contacts, and I woke up my son, I woke up my husband, and I said, I had peripheral vision for the first time. I wanted to see them, and I was so excited. And then I started sobbing. I went, it felt like I was grieving over the loss of this other way of living.
Wow.
What I didn't realize was, the good news is, I had both now.
Yeah.
And I made myself. I went to our living room and I put on Aretha Franklin on my stereo, and I cranked it up and I just danced my brains out laughing and crying, and I said, this is a different world for me now.
That's fabulous. I think it's this book also talks about how sound is really more of a feminine quality. Sight has a little bit more of male characteristics, and I guess in the yin-yang sense. And so it seems important to me that we have more appreciation for the value of sound and in our lives, because we do see so much. I've been very sight-oriented for a long time. I was telling you, and I did a podcast with my audiologist, how I probably wasn't hearing well for most of my life.
Yeah, wow.
So it's I'm appreciating it more, but I'm also learning in a sense. But back to you. So you took lessons, and was she the queen of the 88s, or was that another
Yes,
teacher?
she was.
She was the queen of the 88s.
Yeah, she was the character in my song called Queen of the 88s. And that song is...
I love that song.
Thank you. Well, it's really all based on truth. I mean, it talks about when I met her, what she did for me, how much I learned from her. And it wasn't all just about learning to play piano. And Mary Burke Norton was a real person, and that song is about a real experience.
Yeah. So then you went on, and what sort of happened throughout the next? You took music in school, and you started with playing out and playing bands, or what was the next phase?
Well, I think the next big phase for me was in junior high and high school. I auditioned and sang for the chorale, the choirs there, really using those music reading skills and singing in groups and being on stage and soloing. And when I was 16, some of my brother's friends older brother had asked me would I play a piano in their or keyboard in their band. I wasn't hired to sing. I was just hired to play. And with my parents' permission, I did. That got me in front of people. And one night, the singer didn't show up for a gig.
There you go.
And all the guys in the band looked at me and said, well, we hope you can sing, because, they could sing a few things, but they couldn't sing all night. And I knew that I could.
Yeah.
But I had to get over my terror and my stage fright, and I acted as if I was comfortable with playing and singing at the same time. I play acted like it was old hat, which it wasn't. I was 16.
Mm-hmm.
And then I learned to love it, and I went to University of Kansas as a music composition major, because I see myself, I love piano. I never want to get away from that, and I love playing guitar. But writing songs is something I started a long time ago. And so that's what I studied at school and kept playing in bands. Eventually, I've been recording and touring for over 25 years.
Well, it's fabulous. I've seen you many times, and you're a really just amazing singer. And
Oh, thank you.
I love it. I have a soft spot in my heart for kind of your bluesy gospel, knock it out of the park type stuff. But you've also always been, since I've known you, and we follow on social media and all that.
Yeah.
You're just about love, and I'm thinking that the music and the love are kind of, connected or intertwined or something. Yes.
Yes. And I think I see love as many things, but a universal energy. I see it as a verb. I see it as something we do and that we receive. And I think there is an energy or vibration that can actually be measured in music, with hertz and megahertz, and also biofeedback about how we react to certain sounds and certain types of music. Have you ever had the experience where you're hearing a piece of music for the first time, whether or not it has singing or lyrics to it, and it moves you so deeply, it moves you to tears in a positive way?
Yes.
Yeah, and that's about now this is my opinion only, but that's about the content at the core of that piece is the energy of love. And I think love is also telling the truth, and not a version of the truth. We can't run from it. Our bodies don't lie. When we react to something and, it's the hair raises on our arms, or we get teary and we get choked up, we don't know why, or we laugh, or we feel invigorated, we can't lie about that. That's the truth. So I know love means a lot of different things to a lot of people, but to me, in a sense, it reminds me of the core energy of all that is, uplifting, truthful, growth-inducing, and that's not always easy. It's not always pretty. It's not always what we expect. To be loving, or to, with my intention with the music is to spread the love through music. That's why I'm on the planet. I don't know why that is. I just know that it is. So I quit fighting it. And it doesn't mean all my music is pretty and lacy and, Pollyannish. A lot of it's the opposite of that. But it's my human perspective, the best I can do, of commentary on either my own experience or what's happening in the world around me, or metaphor for that. So love can have a pretty glaring light on things that isn't always easy or pretty. But ultimately, I think it's the thing that will, no matter what happens around us, it's the thing that doesn't change.
Right.
Within the brutal circumstance of, let's say, someone's passing, what we don't know is what that person's experience is. Perhaps they're, I've had a near-death experience in my life when I was 15 years old. I was gone for 3 minutes, left the planet.
Wow.
And my experience was filled with this amazing energy, and I was having a great experience, but those around me, it was very traumatic for them.
Yeah.
And so since that time, and that may have shaped who I am today, I don't have any fear of that. And I don't have any fear ultimately that this is what may appear to be brutality to us still here on the planet may not be the case for that person's transitioning. And I know we're getting kind of heavy here, but I think it's all centered around the same thing. Love is mighty. And
it, as you said, intertwined with music. I mean, you could almost make the case, music is love, or love is music. I mean, how are they different, or how is music similar to love? It's kind of the same core thing in a way, because we're just vibrations.
Right, and I think it's the intention of the composer or the musician delivering that also adds an extra layer to it. We've all heard songs that maybe we grew up with that we really liked or resonated with, but as we're older, we've had more life experience. We go back. This has happened to me before, where I've gone and revisited a song and wanted to perform it. I perform mostly my own songs, but there are certain songs that come back to me that when I sing it, I understand it in a different way now. When it comes through me, it's coming through an extra layer of energy for that audience. So,
oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
So you've also played for, millions of people, probably, if you add them all up.
Right.
And you've worked with musicians your whole life. What have you seen? What can you describe, examples or instances, whatever you would like, about the power of music in people, what it does to people, how they're affected, in the moment, in the long term, whatever. I know you've seen a lot.
Well, here are a couple of examples. I was singing for a friend's wedding, and her father, over the years, had sung for every one of his children's weddings. He was an Irish tenor with a beautiful voice, wonderful personality, but he was in the stages of Alzheimer's, and this would be the one sibling whose wedding he couldn't sing at. So she asked me, would I do it instead? And I said, of course. So I got there and I sang a song that I had written for her and her husband, and then I sang a traditional version of the Lord's Prayer, because that's what she wanted to hear, and that's what her dad would have sung. Her dad was at the wedding, seated, and it was just me and my guitar, and I started singing it. About halfway through, I could hear humming, and it was him. It was her father humming along with me. And then when I got to the part, forever, when I start to go up high, he stood and he sang in his full voice with me. He sang the rest of the song with me. So he sang to his daughter. And so that to me was an amazing moment. And, Jeff, I had to put a grip on my emotions. I thought, don't tear up now, just be strong so he can be strong.
Yeah.
Ultimately, I realized I was just there to help him sing for his daughter.
Yeah.
And he did. So that's one.
He just came right out of wherever he was. And,
it did.
And the place that he was.
Yeah,
and the music brought him back so he could sing to his daughter.
He knew the words, he knew the tune. He could sing as long as I was singing. So that was, oh my gosh, yeah. So that's one of the bigger moments that I've ever personally experienced. And then we've all seen, a more universal thing of people gathering together and getting up to dance or celebrating, or they're saying goodbye to a loved one, and somehow the communal singing helps kind of heal people up so they can smile again. I've had all kinds of experiences like that through my life because of what I do and what I choose to do, to support myself. And one of the other things I've seen too is I really love the unabashed joy of children when they sing and dance. And I know you know what I'm talking about.
Yes, I do.
Because you've got your sweet babies. Yes.
Yeah, granddaughter May.
May is a perfect example. So I grew up having I grew up being sung to. My mother and father sang to all of us, my other 3 siblings, especially when we went to bed at night, we were sung to, or read to. And I did that with my son. And I think there is a connection that's not just familial, it's universal. In a lot of the older ancient cultures, they sang through their grief or danced. They sang to celebrate. The communal singing is so important. It's something I'm doing much more of now. I've organized communal choirs. I'm doing a lot of communal singing because it's important and it's healing. And if anybody is feeling isolated, you don't feel isolated when you're in a big group of singers. It's not about being a professional singer. It's not about sounding a certain way. It's just about letting yourself sing in a environment where you're not being judged or humiliated for opening your mouth. And I'm also a vocal coach, so I work with people when I'm not on tour, and I've been really surprised how many people have been told, "Oh, you're tone deaf," or "Oh, you shouldn't sing."
I've heard that quite a bit in talking with people, actually.
Yes, and I feel so fortunate that I was never told that. I wasn't discouraged about any of the musical endeavors I tried, and we're not good at what we do from the beginning. It takes time. It just takes time to get better, and if you're not encouraged, like so many people aren't. I can't tell you the times I've had, group singing workshops, people show up, they're just ready to sing, and as soon as we do, they're just so moved because they haven't let themselves do it for so many years, and the person leading it, which is me, is encouraging and says, "Hey, let's sing this. Oh, let's do that. Let's try this. Let's have fun with singing." So that's the love part, the magic of that music. When it's infused with the intention of no judgment, let's be supportive. Let's let ourselves do what we want with our voices. Let's let ourselves, more importantly, be heard. Yeah.
That in and of itself is a great example, the group singing that you're talking about, of things that we can do to tap in, access the power of music to make a better world. It seems kind of frustrating sometimes.
Yeah.
And you get a little bit down, and the news and oh my goodness gracious. But
Oh, yeah.
we gotta, come out of this somehow. And it seems to me that music is about as good a path you can try as any. Do you have other thoughts about that?
Well, I think about other dark times in our history and how music was used to let people escape slavery, and they were given information about the Underground Railroad. That was music. I think about the Jewish community and all that they've lost over the years, and recently the tragedy of that, and that there were Shabbat services on Friday, and all over our country, people who were and were not Jewish gathered together at synagogues to sing together, to be support for one another. There's healing in that, and I think people are going to be the saving grace. I think music can be a big part of that. I haven't lost hope. I am determined
Me too.
that, I believe in love, and that's not a fluffy, silly thing. I believe in the power of it. And for me, the tool I have that I can best use right now for myself on the planet is music. So that's what I'm doing.
Well, it's certainly fabulous what you're doing, what you've been doing. Even since the first time that I remember you singing back then in West Virginia, all of us getting together and clapping, whatever the songs were.
Yeah.
I know that people were just shouting and singing and stamping their feet and clapping and crying, and that's music, and that's love too.
And in community. Yeah. Music was, I have a song goes, music was the thread, but music was the thread that put us all together there. Had it not been for music, we wouldn't have been there at that time and
Yeah.
in that place.
Yeah, never would have met. Well, I know you have a house concert coming up tonight. It's going to be a treat for everybody who's there.
I'm excited.
So have a great time with that. But thanks so very much for taking the time to be able to talk with me for the podcast. It's it's inspiring to hear what you have to say, and I'm on board with your love and music.
Well, thank you, Jeff. And let me just say thank you for all you're doing to put this great energy out into the world. And how many, you said 90 podcasts you've done?
60.
60? Well, I'm seeing 90.
It'll be, yeah.
And it'll be
we'll get there.
way more than that. But, you are an important part of this process too. And I appreciate being included in your vision. And thanks for having me.
Yeah, well, it's been great. I think everybody has something to say about the power of music in their life. But I really appreciate hearing what you had to say. And thanks very much. It's Kelley Hunt, everybody, from Kansas City, and look her up. Alrighty, thank you. You've been listening to Planetary Gig Talk, Tales of Music and Magic. I'm your host, Jefferson Glassy, Chief Spiritual Dude of the Planetary Gig Society. We talk with musicians and others about the power of music and how we can use music to help create a better world. Please check out our website, www.planetarygigs.org, for information about some of the organizations promoting music and musicians, resources about the power of music, books, movies, articles, including new research on music and the brain. We welcome your support. The Planetary Gig Society is a Section 501c3 charitable organization, and you can donate on the website. You also can receive a free email signature block demonstrating your support for Planetary Gig Society. Please follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Planetary Gigs. And we want to thank fabulous musician and teacher Eric Weinberg of Little Eric Studios for the Planetary Gig Talk music titled Chill Kid, It's Saul. So please check out Planetary Gig Talk on iTunes, Google Play, and Stitcher. Subscribe and hear all the upcoming episodes. Thanks very much.